Oceans are beautiful only if you are at shores, but imagine that frightening scenario if you are 250 miles away from the land with limited supplies that were stored with the intention of surviving for a few days at max. But getting stuck alone in the mid-ocean for more than a year with no help and hope is even worse than a nightmare. This is the story of José Salvador Alvarenga, who literally survived 438 days lost in the sea. So, to know his unbelievable survival story, let's get started. Alvarenga's story begins on 17 November 2012, when he set out from a village in Mexico to embark on what was supposed to be a 30-hour shift of deep-sea fishing. On November 18, 2012, Alvarenga planned to head out into the Pacific at 10 a.m. and work straight through until 4 p.m. the next day. His crewman was Ezequiel Cordoba, a 22-year-old rookie. Loading the boat involved over 1,000 pounds of equipment, including a 5-foot-long and 4-foot-high icebox that would soon be filled with tuna, shark, and mahi-mahi. He was ready to sail. Alvarenga had been warned that a storm was coming, but there was little that would keep him from embarking. In one day, he'd make enough money to survive for a full week. On top of that, he was a fearless and extremely experienced fisherman, so he believed that such small storms can't hold him back. As he blasted through the waves some 75 miles from land, Alvarenga let out his 2-mile-long fishing line. The storm was gaining strength on land, but had yet to reach the men far offshore. They were chilling like they were on vacation, but around 1 a.m., waves rocked the small boat, which began to tilt sideways like an amusement park ride. Cordoba got scared at this and pleaded Alvarenga to return, but it was too late now. Alvarenga tried to pull the fishing line, but the waves were so ruthless that he had left no choice but to cut the line, dumping thousands of dollars worth of equipment and fish into the sea. Alvarenga spotted the rise of the mountains on the horizon and swiftly started moving towards it. But suddenly, all their hopes vanished when the motor died during the chase when they were just 15 miles away from the shore. He tried to contact Willie, his boss, so that he could report his location to Willie. Willie replied, "We're coming," but their radio also died shortly after the conversation. To worsen the situation, wind continued to rip straight offshore, driving the men farther out to sea. It was 5 days before the winds finally eased. Alvarenga and Cordoba were now around 280 miles offshore. The only likely rescue was by being spotted by another boat, but that was difficult, as they were virtually invisible from more than a half a mile away due to clear water and the outlook of the boat. The sun during the day made it feel as if they were being cooked alive. During the cold nights, they would climb inside the icebox and huddle for warmth. Thirst had become an obsession, as had starvation. As a relief, rain came after 4 days that helped them to take a bath, and they also collected about 5 gallons of fresh water, which was enough for at least a week if rations were kept to a minimum. Roughly 11 days after losing the engine and subsisting on small bony triggerfish he caught by hand, Alvarenga caught a turtle. They were so starved that they not only ate the turtle, but also drank the Merlot-colored blood to quench their thirst. Alvarenga now spent entire days hunting for turtles. Cordoba was disgusted at first, but was so helpless that he had to eat them to survive no matter what. The turtle meat was showing huge side effects on them, as they started hallucinating things at a very extreme level, making them lunatic very slowly. After a few months, they slowly started to accept their reality, in which Alvarenga caught fishes while Cordoba was taking a nap. And when Cordoba woke up, they both ate fishes and spent their whole day looking at the sun and surroundings. Despite being strangers when they set out, Alvarenga and Cordoba had formed a friendship. Night after night, they tried to outdo each other as they invented constellations, each man trying to create a more fantastic drawing. They even fantasized that the planes they tracked across the heavens had been sent to rescue them. On the evening they estimated was Christmas Eve, the men chatted as they prepared their holiday feast. By now, Alvarenga had expanded their menu by hunting the seabirds that perched on their boat. Suddenly, Cordoba groaned, "My stomach!" Bubbles and liquid dribbled from his mouth as he looked as if he would be sick. The men dissected the bird Cordoba had eaten part of earlier, and they were shocked to see as inside the stomach was a poisonous snake. He was now in a stage where he decided to not eat any of this food, and so he laid there starving and sick. Over the next 2 months, as Cordoba withered and shriveled, his arms looked like sticks, and his thighs were reduced to the size of his forearm. He tried to even suicide by jumping into the ocean, but Alvarenga overpowered his attempt and stuffed him into the icebox while sitting on the lid, lecturing and motivating him that they have to fight to tell their story. Cordoba was motivated, but not for long, as a few days later he whispered, "I am dying dying, and then died after a few moments, leaving Alvarenga alone and desperate. After 6 days of his death, Alvarenga threw his body in the water, leaving him all alone in the vast ocean. After 11 months, a large ship passed by him whose passengers also noticed Alvarenga, but yet they did not help him, leaving him more devastated than before, as he said that was the moment when he finally lost his hopes of ever going back. He somehow spent 2 months just not to die in starvation, but he was not less than a man with no soul and no motivation to live. A few weeks later, he finally started considering suicide as an end, as he estimated that he might have crossed 5,000 miles from the point he started sailing, and he now knew that nothing's gonna change now. When he finally accepted his close-to-death situation, suddenly, a miracle happened. On January 30th, 2014, coconuts bobbed in the water and the sky was filled with shorebirds. A cold rain limited visibility. Alvarenga stood on the deck, staring out. A tiny tropical island was emerging from the rainy mist. It looked wild without roads, cars, or homes. He was so excited that his first urge was to dive overboard and swim to shore. But leery of sharks, he waited. It took him half a day to reach land, but that half day was no less than a year for him. When he was 10 yards from shore, he dived off the deck and let a wave carry him in. As the wave pulled away, Alvarenga was left face down on the beach. He held some sand in his hands, which for him was a treasure at the moment. Alvarenga was discovered by the lone couple who inhabited the island, confirming that he will survive for sure now. After 11 days, Alvarenga's health had stabilized enough for him to travel home to El Salvador. When Alvarenga finally saw his daughter, then he finally exhaled with a sigh of relief. He was happy to reach home, but also depressed by the fact that he wasn't even able to save his crewmate, who was there just because of his belief in Alvarenga. After the unbelievable journey, his story also got published in the form of a book and movie, both with the name 438 Days, the duration Alvarenga spent in the hopelessness when everyone might have committed suicide. So, what are your reactions after listening to this epic survival? Let me know in the comments down below.